Today we're traveling to Japan, and not for fun. We're discussing the extremely brutal and the most infamous Japanese unsolved murder of a family of 4.
Oh, God.
We're getting sad.
An entire family of 4.
And it's very brutal.
Oof.
This is the Setagaya family murders. We start with the Miyazawa family. They were planning to celebrate New Year's Eve of 2000 going into 2001 at home. The happy family of 4 was a quiet, normal suburban family who lived in Setagaya, a ward of Tokyo. So, Tokyo is the largest city in the world.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
By population, and there's so many sections of Tokyo. You know how, like, in New York, you got the Bronx and Brooklyn and all that different districts of New York.
Okay.
Tokyo's the same way. They got a shit ton of different districts, and this is the Setagaya district.
Okay.
The father, Mikio, was a 44-year-old businessman. The mother, Yasuko, was a teacher.
I love that name.
Yasuko? Yeah.
That's a pretty cool name.
Japanese people do have cool names. They had 2 children, Nina, 8 years old, a girl, and a son, Rei, who was 6. Setagaya is a quiet suburb with space, which is not normal for the most populated city in the world, Tokyo. The Miyazawa family lived in a duplex. Yasuko's mother, Ashai, lived in the other half of the house. The property was next to a park with walking trails, a playground, and a tree-lined canal.
Sounds like a nice little area.
Yeah, you'll see that that's sort of a problem.
Oof.
The Miyazawa family moved into their home in 1990, but a couple of years later, the city had planned on developing the area into a recreational park and bought all the homes in the direct area to make room for expansion.
So they were just going to bulldoze everything and
turn it into like a giant park.
Huh, okay.
By December 2000, the Miyazawa family was one of only 3 families who remained in the neighborhood, where 200 homes were once inhabited.
God damn.
Yeah. And they had actually begun to make plans to move out in 2001. Sort of capitulating to the city, right? Although there weren't very many houses left near them, the park became busier and busier. Mikio, the father, frequently had to scare off noisy teenagers outside their home for disturbing them. There was a skate park nearby. Skate parks are kind of known for bringing in ruffians, right?
I mean, then again, was the dad just kind of like a boomer or something? He was just pissed at kids having fun? Just going out there like, fucking get off my lawn!
Except.
He
also confronted members from a biker gang.
Oh.
Japan has a bunch of weird gangs. The Busuzoku, maybe. Because they were being loud. It's a biker gang being loud, and he's like, get the fuck out of here!
That's pretty ballsy.
Pretty ballsy. On the morning of the 31st of December, Yasuko's mother, Asahi, tried to call the Miyazawa home, but the call would not go through. Asahi tried calling a couple of times, but she still could not reach them. The car was in the drive, and it was very unusual for them to screen calls. She decided to go around to check on them because she lived in the same duplex, but nobody answered the door. She went back to her place, got the key, and went back to let herself in. What she found was absolute horror. The whole family had been murdered extremely violently, and you really can't imagine what she went through.
Yeah, that would be horrendous.
Oh, absolutely.
To just come check in on your kids and your grandkids and everybody's just fucking dead.
Yep. There's actually a couple cases in Japan where that happens because they tend to live with or next to, like, the older generations, And so I've read a couple of cases where, like, a whole family was murdered and the grandma comes and sees it all and you're just like, fuck,
dude, that is devastating. It immediately makes me think, though, did the grandma have something to do with the gangs? Like, were they just trying to send a message?
She's the gang leader. She takes off her kimono and it's just covered in Yakuza's tats. Yeah.
Right. That'd be pretty G, though. Like...
First, she found her son-in-law, Mikio's body on the floor. He had multiple stab wounds to the neck and one through his head.
Like, clear through?
Stab wound, like, into his skull, yeah.
Oh. Yikes.
He was lying at the base of the stairs. Horrified, she rushed upstairs to see where her daughter and grandchildren were. She found Yasuko and Nina slain, lying in a large pool of blood at the top of the stairs. Both were stabbed multiple times. She ran to her grandson's room, but he, too, was deceased. In his bed, he was strangled.
Damn. That's rough.
Yep. She called the police hysterical, obviously, asking them to come as quickly as they could. When police arrived at the scene, they found the house in complete disarray. Papers were strewn around, and it looked like somebody had slept on the sofa in the living room. I swear it gets really creepy.
So, like, post-murder, they're like, man, I'm tired. I'm just going to
Exactly.
take a little nap over in the living room. Jesus Christ.
It gets even worse.
Oh, God. Okay.
Behind Mikio's body was a chest of drawers, with each drawer pulled out and the papers protruding from them. One of the drawers was missing, and the investigators found it in the bathroom with all of its contents in the bathtub. In the bathtub, they also discovered bloody bandages and garbage. Police found a large amount of cash in Mikio's study, 150,000 yen. And the only missing item was an old jacket of Mikio's. Because the killer left his bloodied clothes, it is possible that he left the scene wearing Mikio's jacket. Other than that, nothing else was missing, which meant this wasn't a robbery. We're obviously trying to find a motive, right?
Yeah.
On the second floor, police found a screen that had been cut and removed from a window in the bathroom. The bathroom was located towards the back of the house, and it could be accessed by, like, climbing up some structures and then going into it. So they see that the murderer slashed the screen, opened the window, and went
That's
in.
how they got in.
Yep. From the outside, they could actually see footprints on the wall below the window. Someone climbing it. Walking from the bathroom, the children's bedroom was the first room on the right. So police believe the killer went into the house, and it was just Ray, the little son, that was in the first room. And he first went in there and strangled him.
Just kind of order of operations.
The order of PEMDAS.
Oof.
Mikio most likely heard some movement upstairs and went to check on his son. When he reached the top of the stairs, he was stabbed with a sashimi knife and then pushed down the stairs. Little Nina was next. The killer found her in bed next to her mother in the third floor loft. Halfway through the attack, the killer seemed to realize that the tip of the sashimi knife had broken off in Mikio's head. So his stabbing wasn't working very well, so he left. At this point, Yasuko and Nina probably thought the assailant had gone, so they made their way down to where Mikio was attacked. Yasuko fetched the first aid kit and tried her best to save her daughter, but the killer was not done. He came back with one of their own kitchen knives and continued to stab them to death.
Fuck.
The attack on the mother and the daughter was the most violent of the four murders. He continued stabbing both of them multiple times after they had perished. From the wounds on Yasuko, who is the mom, it was evident that she had tried her best to fend off the attacker, but it didn't work. I told you, we're probably not going to do a lot of true crime because it's just, like, depraved.
It's, yeah, very, very depressing.
And it's more like, yeah, somebody murdered somebody. It's not like a fun mystery. It's just like a, let's find this fucker. But
yeah,
we're not going to find the fucker, so. During the attack, the killer actually cut his hand and used bandages from the family's first aid kit to tend to his wound. He also used sanitary pads he found in the bathroom to stop the bleeding. So this guy was incredibly fucking sloppy.
Yeah, sounds like it.
He savagely murdered these people, cutting himself in the process, and then left his own blood and bandages behind. DNA.
Yep.
Then he simply stayed in the home that was a happy family home only hours before. He just stayed there all night. He ate melon, ice cream from the fridge, and made himself some barley tea.
Oh my god, this guy.
He used their bathroom, unplugged the phone cord, and slept on the sofa.
Wow.
At 1:18 a.m., he logged onto the family computer and tried to buy theater tickets using Mikio's credit card. But he didn't complete the transaction because he didn't know the security code. He opened browser bookmarks to the websites for the company who employed Mikio, as well as the website of the school where Yasuko worked. It wasn't clear if he was online all night or if he logged in again the next morning, but there was some activity on the computer at 10 a.m. on the morning of the 31st. The grandmother entered the home at 10:55 a.m.
Wow, like just missed him.
And police felt that they could not exclude the possibility that she could have brushed against the computer to inadvertently show up as computer usage. So it could have been him using it till 10 a.m. or when she came in, she bumped the computer.
Gotcha.
Either way, he was there at least past 1 a.m. When she walked in, the sashimi knife that he brought and the family's kitchen knife that was used in the murder were just left on the kitchen table. Now, let's get a little further into the crime scene here. Fun stuff. The killer was incredibly sloppy. He left the first aid kit covered in both Nina's blood as well as his own. He also left shit floating in the toilet that he didn't flush.
Okay.
He left his fanny pack. I've seen it called a fanny pack or like a satchel.
Yeah.
He left his fanny pack, which contained traces of sand. They traced this fucking sand. This is how much they wanted to find this guy.
They couldn't trace the blood?
Well, his DNA wasn't on record.
Okay.
But they traced the sand, and it traced back to the United States.
That's strange.
They were able to trace it all the way to a specific location, the area around Edwards Air Force Base in Nevada. This dude had Nevada sand in his bag. Yeah.
Okay.
There was also a roll of tape, often used by skateboarders to fix their boards. So, you remember there's the skate park next door.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes that seemed a bit out of place. Inside the hip bag was a folded and ironed handkerchief with traces of French cologne, Dracar Noir. It's a famous type of cologne.
Very traveled man.
Yeah. Dracar Noir, a brand popular with skaters at the time. Many footprints were found around the house, which provided interesting clues. The perpetrator wore a Salzinger shoe, but the exact size of the shoe he was wearing was never sold in Japan. In fact, that size was only sold in South Korea. So he had South Korean shoes, American sand.
French cologne.
French cologne. I think they sell French cologne in Japan.
Probably.
So, yeah. But the shoes, they didn't sell that size in Japan.
That's weird.
He also left his bloody clothes behind, but in contrast to the way he'd left the drawers, documents, and discarded the ice cream cups, his clothes were left neatly folded at the scene.
How courteous.
I know. There were gloves, but he didn't use them, as his fingerprints could be found all over the house. In fact, forensic technicians were able to lift a complete set of fingerprints from evidence throughout the scene. They have his fingerprints, they have his DNA.
But they can't track the guy.
They have his shoe size, they have where he was. He went to Nevada, he went to South Korea. Cannot find this guy.
Wow.
And it was just a random fucking murder. The clothes had been washed in hard water with a higher mineral content, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Not like the soft water, which is typically found in Japan. The type of water used was common in Korea, however, so it seems like he washed his clothes in Korea last time he washed them. Police, look, this is how deep they're getting into it. They're finding out what kind of fucking water he used to wash his clothes.
That's fucking crazy. So
I know.
This man came over from Korea to murder this family after he just took a quick trip in the U.S. to get some sand real quick. Just, why not?
Beats the shit out of me and all of Japan.
Wow.
I know.
I just don't know how this guy didn't get caught.
I know. Police traced the purchase of the sweater and the knife to Kanagawa Prefecture. Only 130 of the same sweaters were ever sold. But police were only able to track down 12 of the owners. So, the sweater was purchased in Japan, but washed in Korea. And he was back in Japan, after being in the U.S. A genetic profile compiled from blood found at the crime scene showed that the unknown person was of mixed race. The killer's mother was of Southern European descent. The father was East Asian. DNA showed a special sequence of genes that can only be found in someone from Chinese, Korean, or Japanese descent. The type of profile can be found in 1 of 5 of men from Korean descent, 1 of 10 in Japanese men, and 1 in 13 in Japanese. 1 in 10 in Chinese, 1 in 13 in Japanese. So he was most likely Korean, but he could have been Japanese and Chinese, and he was also half Southern European.
Dude, that's kind of wild that they are able to get that type of genetic profile from blood.
I
Be
know.
able to determine that. That's crazy.
You'd think they'd have this guy dead to rights.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, so they found the East Area Rapist, or the original Night Stalker, recently. He had done horrific crimes. It was actually one of the craziest true crimes. He was like the Zodiac Killer. He was never caught.
I've never heard about
for
this
decades.
guy.
Yeah, dude, he would sneak into people's houses, tie them up, put a stack of their dishes on the back of the husband. He would take the wife to the other room, do what he did to her, and he told the man if he heard the dishes fall, so the man has to lay down on his stomach completely still, because if the dishes fall, he's going to kill the wife. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This guy was fucking nuts. But they caught him because they used genealogy websites. His, second cousin or something submitted their DNA to look at their ancestry, and they figured out who this fucker was through that DNA.
Wasn't that DNA found in, a trash can or something like that? Or something fucking wild? I thought that I remember hearing...
Yeah, so what they probably did was they looked at the DNA and they decided it has to be related to this person. They have a relative... This guy, I forgot his name, who lived in the area at the time. He was actually a cop for a while at the time. And so what they did was they then got his DNA from the trash can to test it. But if they didn't get the DNA from his cousin through the genealogy website, they wouldn't have had him on their radar to check his DNA.
Dude, that's crazy.
It's so crazy. But what I'm thinking is, Does this guy not have any relatives who have submitted their DNA to fucking 23andMe yet?
I guess not. Or Ancestry or something like that.
Eventually it has to happen. Eventually you would think the Zodiac killer will have the same thing. If he doesn't have any relatives, all of these killers. Except if you're too old for police to have kept things that have DNA.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a little tangent. Throughout the years, the theory that the killer was Korean has been placed in the forefront. The fact that the killer could have been Japanese, there was a 1 in 13 chance after all, did not really work into the investigation. He could have also been a first or second generation Korean-Japanese person. So, for all the cool things about Japan, they are very insular like culture, and they're going to focus on this being a foreigner because that's how Japanese people.
It sounds better.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And so he could have been Japanese, 1 in 13 chance he was half Japanese, but they're more focused on Korean guys. Investigators set out to find a mixed race person in various parts of Japan, the Korean expat community, the diplomatic community. Perhaps the maternal European connection could have provided a clue, but no one matching the killer's DNA or fingerprints could be found. It's not very common to be half white, half Asian.
Yeah.
It's really not. So you think they would have I don't know.
They can kind of narrow it down a little bit more, but who knows?
Who knows? Maybe he doesn't even know who his parents are. Maybe he's like an orphan.
True that, yo.
But no one matching the killer's DNA or fingerprints could be found. Because of there's a theory that he was a U.S. serviceman, a military person, because there's huge bases in Japan. And so a lot of the Navy and, Air Force are actually stationed in Japan, in, Okinawa and stuff. And, but the problem with that is, when you go into the military, I know because my sister told me that they get your fingerprints on file.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if they tested his fingerprints against U.S. servicemen, which also the U.S. might not have let them do that.
I was going to say to have access to their database, I feel like that might be kind of a red flag.
Yeah. I mean,
know.
They should have. If you're going to occupy their country with your military bases, you should at least help them find.
I feel like they'd be able to run it internally and see if there was some type of match, though, so then they wouldn't have to export their data, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Right.
But, I mean, if he was a killer from them, would they want Japan to know? I mean, think about it. There's actually a lot of contention over the military bases in Japan. A lot of Japanese people in the region don't want the military there. They pollute the rivers and shit. I mean, they're using jet fuel.
US.
Yeah. They do the same shit in Hawaii, and there's a pretty big movement to get them off of Hawaii, too. But none of this is going to happen. They're going to stay.
Yeah.
But it would make sense why they wouldn't want the Japanese society as a whole to know that they accidentally exported a murderer to their...
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
Already kind of tarnishing their image even more. I could see that.
Yeah. Despite the mountain of evidence, police simply could not figure out who the killer was. They went back to the drawing board and looked at the Miyazawa family's relatives and connections to try and find anyone who would have had a motive to murder them. But friends and family of the victims had no idea who would want to kill them. They had no known enemies and were well liked within the community. Mikio, told off skaters for being too loud, but that wasn't as aggressive as things got. Surely that would not have been a reason to brutally murder his whole family.
Right? Yeah.
Forensic evidence from the literal shit left in the toilet showed that the intruder had eaten sesame seeds and string beans, a very common dish in Japan, mostly associated with home cooking, which was not consumed at the Miyazawa home. And so it led police to believe that maybe this guy lived with his mom still. It's like an old-fashioned meal that your mom would make in Japan.
Okay.
In the 6 months before the murders, there were many reports of animals being killed and mutilated in the park next to the Miyazawa home.
Oh.
Which is a known, stepping stone for serial killers.
I was going to say, that's kind of a red flag there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Local residents found a skinned cat in August 2000.
You're not supposed to take that saying literally.
Later on in the investigation, police were able to find the person responsible for mutilating the animals. He was a bank clerk, and his actions were not connected to the Miyazawa family murders. It's just a separate guy.
Yeah. Who decides, oh, hey, I just want to go murder animals for fun.
Completely different monster.
Yeah.
On the 25th of December, Yasuko told her father-in-law that a strange car parked in front of their house from time to time. There was no reason for a car to be there, as entry to the park was on the other side of the fence. 2 days later, they noticed a strange man walking around the home. On the 29th of December, this is a day before they were murdered, residents of the area recalled seeing a strange man walking around the shops at the local train station. He was in his late 30s or early 40s wearing skater gear. In fact, I know, this
Fucking loser.
an old guy to be wearing skater gear. In fact, the same type of clothing found at the crime scene. Police found this odd, especially for the time of year, because he wasn't dressed very warm. One store owner told police that the man bought a sashimi knife. It was the only knife sold on that day, and forensic testing proved that it was in fact the knife used by the killer. So people had seen the killer actually buy the knife before.
Did anybody comment on his ethnicity?
Not that I know of. That's a good question. I think he probably just looked Asian.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it probably wouldn't be a whiter looking person in that case. I just figured, like, coming from U.S. or anything like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we even have a sketch of him. I didn't see one, and you think that's... I saw the actual, like, from a Japanese website translated in English, trying to get people to help them. Like, to
try and track down this person?
Yeah, the actual, like, public announcement they put out to everyone, and it didn't show a sketch of his face. What you think they would add to it? So
yeah, weird.
I assume they don't have it. Although a lot of times the police won't put that out there because they don't want to scare off the killer. If you commit a crime and they show a face of yourself on TV, you might have before been thinking, oh, they have no idea. And then you see someone who looks kind of like you, and you're like, holy shit, they're on to me. I need to get the hell out of here.
I don't know. I mean, I totally understand how it is a double-edged sword with that, but I still feel like making it more public, as far as at least what the killer might look like, would be better, because then you have more eyes out, right? Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, now he tries to go to fucking Walmart, get toilet paper or something like that. Who knows? Somebody could recognize him.
Yeah, especially in Japan, where people definitely give a shit about this. It doesn't happen very often in Japan. The next day, a neighbor of the Miyazawa family saw the man from before walking around their home again. Nobody was home as they had all gone out shopping. The witness gave a clear description of the stranger and told police that he wore a gray wool hat with a black stripe. He had a fanny pack, a colorful scarf, a black Uniqlo jacket, gloves, a long-sleeve t-shirt, and white Slazenger shoes. Most of these items were found inside the Miyazawa family after the murders, so this is the guy. At 7 p.m. of the night of the 30th of December, Yasuko called her mother on the phone to tell her that they had just arrived home. The grandmother wanted to know if the kids wanted to come over to watch television. Very sweet, very sad. Ray wanted to stay at home, but Nina wanted to go. She went next door for a couple hours and left sometime between 9 and 9:30 to go to bed. So that was the night she actually went over to grandma's and came back. Sad she didn't stay there. The last recorded action in the Miyazawa home was on the family computer. Mikio opened a password-protected work email at 10:38 p.m. And so it was him, because it was his own work password.
Yeah.
At 11 p.m., a neighbor was out for a walk in the park when he heard an altercation inside the home. It did not sound like a physical fight, rather like a husband and wife having an argument. Around 11:30, Asahi and Yasuko's sister heard a loud thud next door. They were still awake, watching television. Around the same time, a witness saw a man briskly walking away from the house, so it sounds like it happened at around 11:30.
Yeah.
Asahi told police that the light of the ground floor in the entrance hallway was on when she arrived after 10 a.m. the following morning, but a paper boy who delivered paper on the 31st said the light was not on that morning. So it seems like when the paper boy came on, the light was off, and the intruder had turned the light on by 10 a.m. by the time the grandma came over. You see what I'm saying?
So it was on in the morning but off at night? Or vice versa?
It was off early morning, on by 10 a.m.
Weird. But then the neighbor saw somebody briskly walking away at like 11 at night.
True. This is very contradictory, unless there were multiple people.
Or maybe he murdered him and was like, oh, well, now that house is empty. I don't want the food to go bad.
Maybe,
So went back in and was like, all right, let's fucking have some ice cream.
It's quite possible. Maybe it's like, I'm hungry now.
I mean, with somebody as psychotic as that, I mean, it wouldn't put it past him.
Yep. This is really frustrating, this next part. On December 31st, a young man went into a medical center at Tobaniko Station, approximately 70 miles north of the Miyazawa family home. That is pretty far. Medical staff treated a wound on his hand, a cut so deep the bone was exposed.
Oof.
Staff recalled that the man was very calm and did not seem too concerned about his wound. They found his behavior strange because the wound was rather serious. They told police that the man was dressed in a black down jacket and jeans and he was in his 30s. He did not provide a name or an address and left the sender. So yeah, he went to treat his wound that he got, and we still didn't catch him. The fact that the perpetrator was concluded to have been younger than the initial estimate of 30 to 40 made police consider that he could have been the son of a diplomat, the son of a soldier, or the son of a wealthy local family who was perhaps one of the skaters who clashed with Mikio. In the months after the murders, 250,000 cops worked on the case.
That's a huge search.
That seems like almost too many, maybe. Murderous home invasions in Japan is not common at all, and authorities were adamant to catch the killer. However, despite all the evidence in the case, never happened. Today, 40 officers are still working on the case.
Oh, wow.
Rereading
23, almost 24 years later.
Rereading case files, re-interviewing witnesses. They often visit train stations, handing out flyers with information about the killer, like the train stations they assumed he would have used. A 20 million yen reward has been offered to anyone who could help police solve it. Every year, officers congregate at the Miyazawa home to pay respects to the family and promise that they will never give up in the quest of bringing their killer to justice.
Damn.
The house is now empty, boarded up, and has become a mausoleum of the Miyazawa family. In recent years, local council wanted to demolish the building again, but the family will not allow it. So that was the Setagaya family murders. It's been called... Have you heard of the Hinterkaifeck murders?
No, I haven't.
So this is even older. It's like in the 20s in Germany or something, in like a farmhouse. And it's much like this one, where the killer, after murdering a bunch of people, just stayed in the house for like... I think in the Hinterkaifeck it's more than a day.
Damn.
Yeah, he just stayed around. And so it's compared to this one because the killer just like fucking stuck around for God knows what reason. But that was our true crime episode. Maybe we'll do more, maybe not. It's depressing. We don't really have much to add about this.
Yeah,
we can't say it was Bigfoot.
Sadly not Bigfoot. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, actually. Yeah. But that's... Kudos to the Japanese police force, though, to have that being something that's ongoing and they still pay respects each year. I mean, fuck, if that happened in America, 3 months later, it would have been dropped. And, like, it would have been just, you know what, fuck it, it doesn't matter. That family got murdered, it's fine.
Especially if it was a white family, it would have been dropped after 3 months. Minority family, 3 days.
Good point, dude, good point. Which is just crazy.
But yeah, they don't fuck around there. Hopefully they find the guy. I don't know. He was so international. They might never find him.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if you just all of a sudden went to Tokyo and then you like took a bus, or let's say you went to China, took a bus to Korea, and then you took like a ferry to Japan, and like the record of you is only in China, and you randomly murder a family in Japan. How likely are they to find you?
Right.
Why the hell would you be in China? Why the hell would you be in Japan?
Yeah.
This is why serial killers get caught, is because they do it over and over and over again because it's a compulsion for them. You wonder if this guy is still murdering people somewhere else.
It's things like this that really makes me hope that there is an afterlife, so then horrendous people can just suffer how they deserve. Because, my God, that is terrible. That family did not deserve that.
No.